Christmas with the Corpses. Anya and I met in our last year of college at a Grieving with Grace support group. We had both lost our parents recently, and like they say, nothing brings people closer together than tragedy. You can imagine my shock then when after a year of dating, 6 months of living together, and a marriage proposal, Anya asked if we could spend Christmas with her parents. "I don't understand," I said, parking our beat-up Corolla outside a disturbingly large mansion. "What do you mean, they're back?" Anya breathed in and out very slowly, and said, "From the dead." "They're back from the dead?" "Yes," she said matter-of-factly. For the first time, I wondered if Anya had been lying about her parents from the moment we met. "When did that happen?" I asked. "A month ago. And I'm just learning this now." "I didn't think the procedure would work," Anya admitted. "Procedure? You have nothing to worry about," Anya reassured me. "I'm sure my dad will love you." Then she got out of the car, leaving me no choice but to follow. I knocked, and after a short moment the door was flung open by Anya's very much alive father. His hair was brown and curly just like Anya's, but his skin had an unsettling, yellow hue, and his eyes were completely black. "Anya. My love. And you must be the boyfriend." I wanted to say, fiancé, but I held my tongue. "Pleased to finally meet you," I said. "I'm sorry we couldn't meet sooner, but up until a month ago, I was dead." I could smell formaldehyde on his breath. "Come in. Your mother needs help decorating the gingerbread men." "Don't worry, I'll take good care of your boyfriend." Anya left towards the kitchen, and her father took me to the living room where a 12-foot-tall Christmas tree was gorgeously decorated with expensive lights and ornaments. He poured us both 2 fingers of aged bourbon. I gladly took it. "I know what you're thinking," Anya's father said, finishing his glass in one gulp. "You do. You're thinking, how can I be talking to a corpse?" "It did cross my mind," I uttered. "Those idiots at the lab finally got my procedure to work. Soon death will be a thing of the past. For those who can afford it, at least." "Oh, that reminds me." Anya's father pulled out his phone and slid it across the mantel to me. On it was a photo of my dad. My dead dad. Alive and kickin'. "Your Christmas present. He's still recovering from the procedure, but he should be fine. However, if you want your mom back then it's going to cost you." A million thoughts started racing through my head. "What do you want?" I croaked. "My daughter is too good for you," he said, pouring himself a second glass. "Call off the engagement, and I'll bring your mom back. You can have my daughter, or your parents, but not both. The choice is yours." The end. Never cut them at night. I used to spend all my day on my phone and only chose to do any work when it was charging. One night, my phone switched off because of low battery, so I put it on charge. It was late, but I still had time before sleeping, as I usually slept late. I had already finished all my work and had nothing else to do when I noticed that my nails were long. So I took a nail cutter and started cutting them on the floor. My mom noticed and shouted, "You should not cut your nails at night. It's wrong." I asked, "Why is it wrong?" "It doesn't matter if I cut them during the day or at night. If I have to cut them, why not now?" She replied, "We never did that." I smirked. After cutting them, I left my nails on the floor. She again shouted, "You should pick those up and put them in the plant pot or the garbage bin." I answered, "The maid will come in the morning anyway, she'll clean it." She said, "If someone walks over those, you can get sick." I shouted, "Please, that's enough. I don't believe those things." I put the cutter back in its place, took my phone, and went to bed. The next morning, my head felt heavy. The sounds around me felt blurry and dull. My head was hot. I was sick. My mom found it as an opportunity to scold me and show that she was right. She began teasing me about how she had warned me and I didn't listen. I replied, "Okay, Mom, you win. Then my mom brought me some tea. When I took the cup, I noticed that the nails I had cut were still the same as before. "Mom," I said, "didn't I cut my nails? Why are they still long?" My mom looked confused and said, "Maybe you didn't cut them short enough." "I did," I said. It was weird because by night I found them even longer. It disturbed me. I called my mom again. She listened to my problem and said we would go to the doctor tomorrow. She assured me and told me to rest for now. But when I woke up the next day, my hands felt heavy. The blanket was wet with blood on my hand's sides. Pain burned through my fingers. I hesitated, terrified to lift the blanket. Slowly, I pulled my hands out from under the blanket and noticed. My nails had grown longer than my hands. The end. The man in the mirror. They take your shoelaces first. Standard, the nurse says. Her badge reads Lorna. Add them to the trophy cabinet, I say. Along with my dignity. She buzzes me through without smiling. Holorest is all white walls and polite locks. Disinfectant, old tea, the hum of fluorescent lights. Lorna points at a plastic chair outside an office. Dr. Patel. Sit tight. In the corridor mirror, the convex kind bolted high in the corner, everyone looks bent and small. My own face lags. A half beat behind. I blink. The reflection blinks after. Dr. Patel arrives with a file and a calm voice. Jamie? That's what I answer to today. His office is plain. 2 chairs. Desk. Tissues. A mirror on the wall behind my chair, framed in gray plastic. He sits. Do you know why you're here? Bits, I say. Police. Pavement. Then nothing. You were admitted after you assaulted your partner, he says. My stomach drops. No. You don't remember, he replies. That happens. I look at the mirror. My reflection stares back too steadily, like it is waiting for a cue. Patel notices. You mentioned mirrors. There's a man in them, I say. He looks like me. Same face, wrong eyes. He moves like he's leading and I'm copying. And he says what? That she isn't her, I whisper. That my girlfriend was swapped. That I'm the only one who can tell. Patel's gaze stays on me, careful. And last night? I tried to make it stop, I say. The belief, he says. I nod, then glance down and see my knuckles. Bruises, yellow and purple. My fingers ache. Patel watches me see them. That is why you are here. That isn't me, I say, but it comes out thin. He stands and steps behind my chair. Look at the mirror. Properly. I lift my head. In the glass, Jamie is still sitting with his hands folded. He raises his eyes a heartbeat late, then smiles, slow and pleased. My own mouth does not move. Patel's reflection matches him perfectly. Mine is the only one that disobeys. Cold rushes through me. That's not possible. It is in this building, Patel says. You have been here before. You screamed at the glass and begged to be let out. My throat tightens. What am I? An echo, he says, almost kind. A copy that stepped out and started wearing the original's life. In the mirror, Jamie's lips form words without sound, but I understand them. Let me out. Patel reaches under the frame and turns a small hidden key. The mirror gives a soft click. He looks at me, calm as ever. Good, he says. Now we can start treating the thing that thinks it is Jamie. The end. The perfect girl. I never thought I would meet the love of my life in a worn-down diner in the middle of nowhere, but life has a strange sense of humor sometimes. I used to work as a truck driver, so building stable relationships wasn't easy when I spent my life on the road. While I had the occasional girlfriend, nothing really lasted or felt worth fighting for. My life changed when I met Mary, on that strange night when I had to stop my truck due to heavy rainfall. Mary is what I consider to be the perfect girl. Well-mannered, always smiling, always eager to see me and talk to me. She has one odd quirk, a fondness for 1950s-style clothing, especially dresses. But that only makes her more lovable. We haven't been dating long, and somehow we always choose to meet at the diner where we first met. The place is in the middle of nowhere. I'm surprised it gets any visitors at all. Truth be told, I always see the same people sitting inside. As I'm driving along the old forest road toward the diner, a message chimes on my phone. So, Jack, when do we get to see this Mary? Honestly, we think you're pulling our leg. It's my friend Jacob. I pick up the phone and record a voice message. I'll ask her. And before you ask, the name of the diner is Moonlight Delight. And yes, we should really go someplace else. That place gives me the creeps. It always has the same patrons, and the interior looks like it's straight out of the 1950s. I smile and put the phone away. After an hour, I finally arrive at the diner and park my car out front. Warmth fills me as I see Mary smiling at me through the window. She's wearing a vintage-style red floral dress, with a matching red hairband holding back her hair. I smile back and calmly go inside. "Hello, sweetie," Mary says with a smile, gesturing for me to sit as she's already pre-ordered our food. "Hi, honey," I reply, smiling as I sit down. We spend the night talking and enjoying our food, but I can feel my phone vibrating in my pocket the whole time. Apologizing to Mary, I take it out and see hundreds of messages, the last one reading, "I don't know what's going on, but you need to get out of there," written in bold letters, sent by Jacob. Attached are 2 old news articles titled, "Moonlight Delight Set on Fire by Unknown Woman, Multiple Dead," and a more recent one, "Body Found in the Ruins of Old Diner." My hands begin to shake as I notice the air turning heavy, thick with the smell of smoke and char. I slowly raise my head, only to see the interior blackened and burned, the former patrons now twisted into ghastly monsters. Mary looks at me, her once pristine appearance now horrifying and disfigured. "Something wrong, dear." The end. The stillness. Every morning it's the same old routine. You wake up in a cotton candy-colored hellscape, naked, standing, and utterly alone. You don't know who you are or how you arrived here in this grotesquely pink walk-in closet. You try to think of something, a name, a face, one moment spent anywhere elsewhere, but there's only a creeping certainty you've endured 1,000 mornings like this, 1,000 wakings blurring into an endless fluorescent dawn. You try to run, but your legs are pillars. So you focus on a movement, one lift of the toe, and still no movement. Inside you're sprinting, but outside you're carved from stillness. The connection between will and flesh severed somehow, your body frozen with the recognition that you recognize nothing, existential dread reducing you to a catatonic state. You try to scream, but the sound dies in your throat, your mummified quiet offset only by the hum of an unseen air conditioner. Even your breathing happens without you, as if your mind were some ghost consciousness buried in this body standing according to someone else's design, eyes unblinking, forced to bear witness to this waking nightmare in perfect unwavering detail. Within your fixed field of vision you search for clues, analyze the edges of your sight where your gaze barely reaches, hoping for some detail that might explain where you are or why you are where you are. Surely a door must exist, you tell yourself. Surely windows, exits, signs, something else must exist somewhere beyond your line of sight. But you cannot make out what you don't see nor make sense of what you do, not the pink synthetic wallpaper, not the cheap mirror that abstractly renders your unclothed form, least of all those shiny hangers just out of reach with vinyl and sequined outfits. It's a closet of horrors, many in number, gowns in translucent fabrics and uniforms tagged with false professions, a veterinarian's coat ending at mid-thigh and a teacher's outfit so short. Standing becomes exposure, many infantilizing, all debasing, costumes that turn the wearer into something less than woman. And as you wonder what depraved individual selected them, the floor pulses with seismic rhythm. Hangers sing against rods and dust motes strobe as someone nears, each footfall a tectonic event. And you know, the architect of this tableau is close, and with them the answer why you wake each morning dressed in nothing but fear. You hear a monstrous giggling, then see its source, a face filling your field of vision, a malformed giant child, whose pigtails sweep like curtains across the sky, whose missing front tooth threatens a cavern you could fall through. And as its fingers curl around you with a sense of casual ownership, you know what you are, what you'll always be. No, you think, please no. But it's too late, the truth slams home with the weight of worlds. Okay, Barbie, says the child, gripping your plastic body tighter. Let's play. The end. Attention, unidentified passenger on board. I'd taken the train from Delaware to DC many times before. 7:53 p.m. out of Wilmington, arriving at 9:36. The tickets were cheap, and the train was mostly empty around that time. It was perfect. Tonight was no different. I sat in the window seat as usual, reading, as the train rocked gently back and forth. About 20 minutes into the ride, however, the intercom came on overhead. Attention, unidentified passenger on board. I looked up. Huh. Unidentified passenger. I glanced around the car. There was only the middle-aged woman I saw when I got on, several rows back. She was looking up, confused. What the hell? The voice overhead was different, too. It wasn't the usual garbled man's voice, it was a woman's, monotone and robotic. Do they mean, like, some kind of serial killer just got on or something? My stomach dropped. Wouldn't they say something more extreme though? Like, hide. We're making an emergency stop. This almost sounded like, they were announcing someone hadn't paid for their ticket. I glanced to the front of the car, where the LED marquee was. Instead of listing the next station stop, it said, Unidentified passenger, unidentified passenger, unidentified passenger. The letters scrolled past, over and over, jittering orange pixels. Maybe they mean someone a Russian spy, or something. Or maybe it was just some sort of glitch. I stared at the orange letters. Unidentified passenger. I texted my boyfriend. The train's saying there's an unidentified passenger on board. Really weird. It's got to be fake, right? Or should I get off? He replied instantly. That's really weird. Maybe get off. I can take the next train up to you. Where are you? I pulled up maps and checked our location. We were just a few minutes from Aberdeen. After hesitating for a second, I grabbed my bag. It probably is just some glitch or something, but I'm not going to be some sitting duck. I turned to the aisle. A woman was standing right in front of me. The middle-aged woman from the back of the car. I jumped, banging my head on the overhead luggage rack. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, but, do you know what's going on? She asked. I shook my head. This has got to be a joke or something, right? What do they mean, unidentified passenger? I don't know. I'm getting off just in case. I slipped past her into the aisle and started for the vestibule between the cars. Good idea, she said. She hurried back to her seat and started grabbing her things. I pressed the button for the door and stepped into the vestibule. The metal floor shook underneath me. The landscape outside the train was pure black, except for a single small light twinkling in the distance. The door behind me opened and a woman stepped in, clutching her bag close to her chest like a shield. I'm supposed to be at my daughter's wedding tomorrow morning, she muttered, messing with her ashy blonde hair. We just got back on good terms, if I'm even a minute late. I glanced at the window into the next car. It was empty, except for a single man near the front. I could just see the top of his head poking over the seat. He wasn't packing his stuff, or even moving. Maybe we're overreacting, I thought for a second. No. This is how people get hurt. Not changing their plans when the alarm bells start going. As soon as something is off, you get out, period. My mom had taught me that a long time ago. The train wobbled and shook. Lights grew in the distance, twinkling through the darkness. We were approaching. I stepped closer to the door, staring out the little square window. The lights grew larger. The concrete platform rolled into sight. The squat brick building, the dark windows. Silver sign, Aberdeen Station. We blew right past it. I stared out the window. We just passed the station. No, what, really? I nodded. Before I could say anything else, the intercom clicked to life. Attention, passengers. Please. Remain in your original train car for the duration of the ride. Thank you. The woman's voice again. Monotonous, slow. What the hell, the woman whispered. I glanced through the window into the next car. The man was still sitting there, completely still. No, wait, not still. As the train took a curve, his head bobbed and lolled on his shoulders. Limply. As if he were. I ran back to the door of our train car, slammed the button. The door shuddered open and we slipped inside. That guy, there was something seriously, I could barely choke out the words. I know. Do you think he was? She couldn't bring herself to say it. It kind of looked like that. I glanced back at the door into the vestibule. It was still empty, but the marquee above the door now read. Stay in your car, stay in your car, stay in your car. What do we do? I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The woman and I began talking at once. On a train. Someone's dead. It won't stop. Just past Aberdeen. The operator said she'd get someone out to us. But deep down, I knew, what could they possibly do? If whoever was driving the train wouldn't stop. How could the police intervene? Set up a blockade? Possibly kill us in the crash? I stared out the window. Golden lights flew by, clusters of suburbs, disappearing back into the darkness. I swallowed. You can't survive jumping out of a moving train, can you? I don't think so, at this speed, she replied. Silence pressed in on us. We should hide in the bathroom, she said. It has a lock. It'll keep us safe. It says stay in the car, I said, pointing to the marquee. And you trust whoever it is, putting that up? The bathroom doors are flimsy anyway, I said. If someone wants to get us, they will. I closed my eyes, running my hands down my face. Could we just be freaking out over nothing? Maybe that guy, maybe he was just sleeping. Maybe they passed the stop for some other reason. Maybe it really is just some glitch. The lights overhead flickered. And then went out. What the fuck? I whimpered. The train car was only lit by the orange glow of the marquee at the front of the car. It was still flashing the same message. Stay in your seats, stay in your seats, stay in your seats. This is insane, the woman whispered. I texted my boyfriend. The lights just went out, we called 911, I don't know how they're going to get us off the train. I hit send and closed my eyes. Wait. The lights being out, maybe that helps us, the woman said. We can hide better. What are the chances he'll find us in the entire train? She crouched down. I don't think we can fit under the seats. There are benches at the back. I bet we can fit there. I slowly felt my way through the darkness of the car, pressing my hands into the cloth seatbacks on either side. We reached the last aisle, where the seat configuration had been altered to have benches facing each other, with a space in the middle. I squeezed down into the space between the seats, then shuffled under the first bench. The woman did the same, squeezing under the second. I felt too hot. The rug scratched my arms. The metal of the seat pressed against my head. I twisted my legs and pushed myself back, so that my head wasn't poking out into the aisle. We were decently well hidden. But if the guy, or whoever it was, found us, there was no way we could escape. We were trapped. We lay there, underneath the seats, for what felt like an eternity. The car rocked and swayed underneath us. My hair fell into my face. My legs ached. I knew Harry was probably texting me back, but I'd silenced my phone and it was deep in my pocket. I couldn't contort to get it out. Not that I'd want to. What if they came by while I was looking at my phone and found us because of the light? I was jolted back to reality by the shuddering sound of the door opening. No. No, no, no. I strained to listen. Soft, thumping footsteps sounded on the far end of the car. Slow and methodical. Quiet. Like they were stalking their prey. The footsteps grew louder. I held my breath. Thump. A black, leather men's shoe stepped into view. No. It glistened in the orange light. Almost as if it were wet. My lungs burned. Please don't look. Please. Please. Go. Keep walking. Go. 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 They hesitated. Shoes frozen on the carpet, inches from my face. Then they finally took another step. And another. The door behind us shuddered open. And then closed. I let out my breath out in short, silent little bursts. Then sucked in another breath as slowly as possible. They passed us. We're okay. We're fine. I turned my head to look at the woman. Tears were rolling down her face as she stared back at me. It's okay. He didn't see us, I whispered. Her mouth hung open. Her lips trembled. It's okay, I whispered again, but she didn't even blink. That's when I realized she wasn't staring at me. She was staring past me. I turned around. My blood ran cold. There was something at the door. Pressing its face against the window. Fogging up the glass. No. The person that just passed us, wasn't it? That was just another passenger. Trying to stay quiet, trying to hide. Maybe even the guy we thought was dead. It was that thing in the window. Eyes pitch black. Skin ghastly white. Barely lit in the flickering orange of the marquee, which now read "Don't run, don't run, don't run." That was the unidentified passenger. The woman crawled out from under her seat. No. I whispered, but she was already slamming her hand on the door open button. It slowly shuddered open, and she began to slip through it. The door opened on the other end. Rapid footsteps. Out of sync, frantic, running. I saw a flash of bare feet, and bare hands, thumping against the carpet. In seconds it had run past me, into the next car. Before the door even had a chance to close. I heard a muffled scream. And then, silence. No. No, 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 no. I bit my lip, trying to stop from crying. I knew she was dead. There was no way she could have gotten away. I closed my eyes tight. Trying to push it all down. Stay quiet. It went past. You just have to make it until SCCCCHLLLP. The door opened. White, bare hands on the carpet, slick with something dark. Followed by bare feet. Oh God, she's on all fours. She jerkily moved forward in a spider crawl, until she was at my seat. She knows I'm here. No, no, no. I held my breath as its pale ankles buckled underneath the hem of its white skirt. As it began to crouch. Long dark hair came into view, skimming down to the floor. More and more hair, as it tilted its head down to look at me. It stopped just short of showing its face. I could see its hairline. Its forehead. As it hung its head upside down, inches from my face. It stopped there, frozen. Waiting. I could see its entire body shift as it breathed. I could hear the high-pitched rasp of its breath. A single drop of blood dripped onto its pale hand. But it didn't show its face. My lungs felt like they were about to burst. But I forced myself not to breathe. Not to move. I stared at the hair and the blood on its hands and the dirty white dress skimming its ankles. With a creaking sound, it got up. The door slid open, and it disappeared. I took in desperate gasps of air. My lungs burned. Hot tears rolled down my face. I couldn't feel my legs or my feet. You can't leave. Don't run, don't run, don't run. That's what the Marquis had said. I would stay here forever, in the darkness, even if every nerve of my body felt like it was on fire. I don't know how long I was there, crouched under the seat. Trying to breathe as quietly as possible. Pins and needles crawling up my legs. My head pounding. My arms numb. But then the train slowed. The lights flickered back on. And the intercom crackled to life. A man's voice, as usual. Now approaching Union Station. I didn't crawl out from under the seat until the train jerked to a stop. My entire body stiff, blazing with pain, I pulled myself out from under the seat. Hobbled off the train and onto the platform. I felt like I couldn't even walk. The bright lights dazed me. Footsteps clicked, voices murmured, suitcases rolled across the concrete. A speaker somewhere overhead announced a leaving train. When I turned back, though, I realized no one else had exited my particular train. Just me. And I didn't notice the hair until I made it into the station. A long, black hair entwined around my wrist. And my skin underneath it, blistered and red, everywhere the hair had touched. The end. I was invited to my girlfriend's cousin's wedding. I barely made it out alive. I'd only been dating my girlfriend for 2 months. Honestly, you could hardly even call it a real relationship yet. But strangely enough, she invited me to her cousin's wedding. I felt a little nervous about it, though deep down I was glad she was taking things seriously enough not to shy away from introducing me to her family. I was worried about what they might think of me. Emilia was a jackpot. Not only incredibly beautiful and charming, but also devoted and always cheerful. Like something a person would dream up for themselves, that's how she felt to me. I honestly couldn't understand what she saw in me. I never thought of myself as anything special. But it wasn't a dream. We were sitting in my car, pulling into the courtyard of Emilia's family farm. Supposedly, her family was insanely wealthy, or so I gathered, because their estate was so large that we'd been driving off the main road for almost an hour since leaving the little town where she'd said the land was already her father's property. I'm pretty sure they owned several hectares. Are you nervous? Emilia asked sweetly, snapping me out of my thoughts as she touched my shoulder. I just gave her a nervous smile. Of course I was nervous, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Her father was probably some filthy rich landowner or something, who knows. One thing was for sure, this wedding wasn't going to be simple. The whole place felt strange. Emilia left me in one of the rooms in the house for almost the entire afternoon. Supposedly, it was all a family thing, and she asked me to just rest. I'd driven a long way, and we'd be celebrating later that night anyway. The ceremony itself was beautiful. They held it on the farm, inside a church that, according to Emilia, her great-grandfather had built on the estate long ago. But the whole thing felt oddly lifeless, as if everyone there had already been through it before. That's how they acted. Emilia was a bridesmaid, so I was left alone for almost the entire event. Honestly, I didn't even understand why I was there, just a guy in the early stages of dating a girl, sitting at her cousin's wedding. I was completely out of place, like someone who'd ended up there by accident. Finally, when the ceremony was over, Amelia came back to me. "I'm sorry, Frank," she said, giving me a quick kiss. "I know I'm leaving you alone a lot, but my parents are really old-fashioned." "It's fine, Em," I waved it off. "We'll dance at the party." She kissed me again before hurrying off to the family photo shoot. I watched her relatives from a distance. They all seemed so theatrical. Maybe it was just my nerves, but it was like they'd done this exact photo shoot countless times before. Then someone called out that we could head to the dinner tent. Not far from the big house stood a massive white marquee. That's where the dinner, the party, and the drinking would last until morning, celebrating the wedding. Em didn't come with me there either. She was still caught up in family photos. I walked over with a few guests and distant relatives, only to be hit with another surprise. I'd been placed at a strange table. According to the seating chart, I was at a large round table with a completely random assortment of people. Naturally, Em was seated at the family table, far away from me. This wedding was getting worse by the minute. I figured everyone had been waiting for dinner, because the tent filled up fast. At least at my table, every seat was already taken. It was like no one there actually knew each other. At the other tables, people were chatting, laughing, telling stories. You could tell they'd known each other for years. But at ours, it felt like sitting on a bus with a bunch of random strangers, awkward smiles, the occasional attempt at small talk, but the whole thing stayed uncomfortable and distant. "I'm Carter," said the man to my right. Suddenly, holding out his hand. He looked a little drunk, but not to an obnoxious degree. "Frank," I replied, shaking his hand. "Who are you here with?" Carter asked before taking a big swig from the beer in his hand. "My girlfriend's one of the bridesmaids," I told him. "She's also the bride's cousin." "What about you?" "Oh, I'm just the groom's mailman," Carter said with a straight face. I laughed. I figured he was joking, or maybe there was just something about this family I didn't get. Either way, sitting there was painfully awkward. Luckily, the food was finally served before long. By then, every table in the tent was full, and everyone seemed to be busy with their dinner, or at least that's what I assumed they were focused on. The atmosphere was getting livelier, people were drinking, and some had even started dancing. But I still felt out of place. I'd barely seen Em all evening. Why the hell had I agreed to come here? I'd even convinced myself she might introduce me to her father. I'd only seen him once during the wedding ceremony, talking with some older couple, not even glancing in my direction. I decided to head to the bathroom. Besides, after all the drinks I'd had, I was barely holding it in. Outside the tent, there was a small structure set up with old-fashioned outhouse toilets. But the moment I stepped out of the tent, I nearly pissed myself on the spot. An old lady was staring at me in the dark. Her eyes seemed to glint in the moonlight. "Jesus," I exhaled sharply. "You really scared me." The old woman shuffled closer in her little beige suit. I don't like to be rude to the elderly, but she reeked, like she hadn't bathed in weeks. Her face was pale and wrinkled, and her yellowish eyes seemed to glow. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked, a little uneasy. "Oh, dear," the woman croaked in her raspy voice. "I'm feeling just fine. Did you eat much?" "Not too much meat, I hope." Well," I stammered awkwardly. "Yeah, I ate." By then, she was right in front of me. Something about her was deeply unsettling, like she was starving for something. She licked her lips, and I could swear I saw drool drip from the corner of her mouth. "Oh, Grandma Zipro," came a familiar voice from behind me. "Don't start talking nonsense again." It was Em, hurrying over to the old woman. She hugged her and patted her gently. The whole thing was unbearably awkward, like everyone here was out of their minds. "Frank, I'm sorry," Em said, turning to me. "I'll walk Grandma back inside, then I promise I'll spend time with you." I just nodded dumbly. Right now, I just wanted to use the bathroom. And honestly, I was starting to get fed up with M's bizarre wedding, and, yeah, I was feeling a little hurt. Still, I shouldn't have been mad at M. The rest of the evening actually went pretty well. M spent most of the time with me. We finally danced, had a few drinks, and she even introduced me to the newlyweds. They were nice, friendly, down-to-earth people. We didn't talk much, of course, it was their night, and they had plenty of guests to mingle with. But for the first time that evening, I felt more relaxed, not like I was stranded in a sea of strangers. Sure, M would occasionally stop to chat with someone, but it was always about ordinary stuff, how they were doing, how they liked the party, whether they were ready for the rest of the night, things like that. But M was clearly looking forward to something. She spoke to me with almost childlike excitement about the raffle, where they'd draw a guest's name and that person would win something. Anyone could be picked. She even got me a little hyped for it, even though we had no idea what the prize would be. Finally, around midnight, it was time for the raffle. M told me it was a family tradition, they'd done it at every wedding since she was a kid. I didn't think much of it, until I suddenly heard my name called out loud. I jumped up, startled. Everyone clapped and smiled, at least, most of them were cheering. I was the winner. Great, the most random guy here just won the family raffle. That ought to make me popular. So, M. What's my prize? I whispered to her, standing to my right. M just looked at me, maybe a little disappointed, but still smiling proudly. She didn't say a word, just stared at me with those big brown eyes. Come with me, said the bride, stepping up in front of me. I hadn't even noticed when she came over. It caught me off guard, and the fact that she reached out her hand for me to take was even more unsettling. What did they want from me? Why couldn't someone else have won this stupid thing? M. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What is this? I turned to her for help, but she just kept smiling at me, still looking a little downcast. Go with her, Frank, M said softly. Please. If you do this, you'll win the whole family over. Please, it's tradition for us. Her pleading softened me a little, but I was still uncomfortable. Everyone was staring at me with these knowing grins. Why were they looking at me like that? What was I supposed to do? The bride took my hand and led me away. I didn't resist. I just hoped this dumb little game would be over soon so we could go back and pretend I was just some random guy at this wedding again. Carol, right? I asked the bride as we slipped out of the tent through a back exit. Where are we going? Just shut up and come, Carol said softly. I felt awkward and uncomfortable. Carol was a young woman with short blonde hair, and my girlfriend's cousin. What the hell did she want from me, out here in the dark, in the middle of a field? She led me toward a small wooden shed, and when we reached it, she ushered me inside. A single dim lamp burned in the cramped wooden space. It felt like I was a teenager again, hiding somewhere, nervously waiting for a first kiss. The whole thing was awkward as hell. Carol. Please, I don't know what this is about. But I'd rather just go back. She just stared at me coldly. All the warmth in her face was gone, replaced by a look of sheer contempt. Then, in one sudden motion, she shoved me hard against the wall. I glared back at her, now angry myself. Carol, I really don't know what the hell this is. But please, stop. She stood with her back to the shed door, glaring at me. Then, with a sudden move, she slid the straps of her pretty pink dress off her shoulders. I froze in shock. What the hell was this, some medieval bullshit? My prize for the tombola was supposed to be a wedding night with the bride? But that wasn't what happened. Carol's shoulders popped out of joint at the same time, her arms stretching unnaturally long, her nails growing into massive claws. As I looked at her face, her once pretty features sagged into wrinkled folds of loose flesh. Drool poured from her mouth, and her sharp, tiny teeth glinted yellow in the lamplight. I didn't even have time to process it. Carol's long, clawed hand slashed at me hard. My jacket and shirt tore open instantly, and a burning pain shot through my chest. Blood seeped through the shredded fabric. I collapsed to the floor from the pain, and she pounced again, driving her claws deep into my thigh. I screamed in agony. But luck was on my side. If I hadn't reached just a little farther across the floor, I'd probably be dead now. A pickaxe head stuck out from behind a small crate. That was all I needed. My survival instinct kicked in. I grabbed the pickaxe and swung it hard, burying it in Carol's side. Carol, or the thing she had become, let out a piercing shriek, her yellowish eyes blazing with rage. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the pickaxe free and brought it down again with all my strength. One of her arms came off almost on its own, spraying foul-smelling blood everywhere, but I didn't stop. I swung again, splitting her skull open. I kept hitting, over and over, until she collapsed to the floor and the stench of her black, reeking blood filled the room. I wrapped my jacket around my injured thigh. It was bleeding badly, so I had to do something. My thoughts were racing. How could I have been so stupid? How could I ever believe a woman like Em would want me? And hell, we met on the damn subway. What was I thinking? Love at first sight. But what pissed me off the most was this whole fucked up game. I hadn't won the tombola at all. I was the prize. Fucking monsters. I wasn't going to die here. Darling, I hope you left some for me, a voice called from outside. The real party's about to start inside. I kicked open the little wooden door and swung the pickaxe down. It was Carol's husband, Tim. My attack caught him completely off guard. He didn't even have time to react. One clean strike, right in the middle of his forehead. Tim collapsed, and I started hacking at him again with the pickaxe. Then I heard the screams. They were coming from the tent, shouts, wails, death cries. And then I understood everything. Some of the guests had been invited here for one reason only, so these things could eat them alive. A woman came running out of the tent, 3 grotesque creatures, just like Carol, chasing right behind her. They caught up in seconds, knocking her to the ground with their long arms, and started tearing her apart exactly as she was. Fuck this. I was getting the hell out. My way out was my car. It was parked in front of the house, and the keys were in my room. I was not dying here. Luckily, the house was in the opposite direction from the tent. So I just limped toward the old manor. The creatures were still slaughtering the guests. Hellish sounds echoed from the tent, but I didn't give a damn. There was no one left for me to worry about. Em was one of those twisted freaks too, and I'd even slept with her. The thought that I'd been deceived for months made my blood boil. I smashed the front door open with the pickaxe. Thankfully, our room was on the ground floor, so I didn't have to limp far to find it and grab the car keys. There is a God, never would have thought it'd be this easy to get out of this hellhole. But when I stepped back into the hallway, there she was, the old hag I'd seen earlier, still drooling as she stared at me. "What do you want, Granny?" I growled, raising the pickaxe. Zpro Granny didn't answer. She just started swelling up, transforming just like Carol had. But this was something else. The hallway walls cracked as her arms shot out, her body twisting into a massive, wrinkled, greasy mound of flesh. I stared in horror at the disgusting transformation, then heard sounds from the other end of the hallway, right behind me where I'd come in. Another creature stood there. It had a long neck, and even longer, clawed hands. I moved fast. I jumped back into the room and slammed the door shut. I shoved a small dresser in front of it, then shoved the car keys deep into my pocket so I wouldn't lose them. I had just opened the window to climb out when a huge impact, or maybe an explosion, blasted me clear out of the room. I sat up in the garden, gasping for air. The wall of the house was gone, replaced by a massive, pulsating tentacle. Dust choked me as I coughed. Two creatures were forcing their way out from the rubble of the collapsed section. I had to get to the car. I had to get out of this place as soon as possible. As fast as I could, I rushed to my car, my little green Ford. I'd never been so happy to see it. There it was, untouched. The moment I jumped inside, the ground began to shake. This was my last chance to get the hell out of here. But when I turned the key and switched on the headlights, my stomach dropped. Em was standing just a short distance away from my car. She looked human, but her face and mouth were smeared with blood. I just stared at her, hurt and betrayed. "Frank, you can't leave!" Em shouted. "Oh, I'm leaving, and no one's going to stop me." I yelled back, my voice sharp with anger. "Frank, please," she continued. "You don't understand. Z-Pro isn't just anyone, he's the creator." I listened to her rambling in disgust, but then the ground shook again. My car jolted violently, and Em could barely keep her balance as everything trembled around us. "Frank," she screamed. "Please. Something terrible will happen if he can't feed on your insides. Please. Ask your fucking mother," I muttered under my breath, and slammed my foot on the gas. It could have been pure coincidence, or maybe the universe lining things up just right, but the moment I hit Em with the car, the massive family house exploded. Her black, reeking blood splattered across my windshield, then spattered under my tires, jerking and spinning the car. That's when I saw what had taken the house's place. The building's remains were flung into the air, bricks, beams, chunks of wall crashing down everywhere. And in its place, a mountain of writhing flesh was growing. Tentacles whipped in every direction, dozens of yellow eyes glaring at the world, and at its peak, an enormous, gaping mouth yawned wide. I think I just unleashed something ancient. But I sure as hell wasn't going to sacrifice myself to save this pack of degenerate monsters. I floored it and drove away as fast as I possibly could. The end. My friend told me to kill him if he ever knocked on my door. I thought he was joking at first. We were sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., lights off, drinking some coffee, because neither of us could sleep. He kept checking the windows like he expected something to be standing there. "If I ever show up at your place unannounced," he said, very calmly, "don't open the door." I laughed it off thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "I'm serious," he continued. "If I knock, if I call, if I text you asking to come in, don't. And if I insist, if I sound desperate, you need to kill me." That's when I stopped smiling and laughing altogether. I was confused. Why would my friend that I've known for long tell me this? That's when he told me what happened up north. He'd gone hiking alone, deep into a stretch of forest that locals avoided. No trails, no markers, just trees that looked identical no matter how far you walked. On the third day, he realized something was following him, not stalking but keeping pace. He'd stop, and it would stop. He'd walk, and it would walk. When he finally saw it, it was standing between two trees, half hidden, like it hadn't finished deciding what shape to be. It looked almost human. Almost. Too tall, arms a little too long, head tilted like it was listening for instructions. When it opened its mouth, it spoke in his voice, but it used the wrong words, like it had learned language by watching someone mouth sentences through glass. "Help me, I'm lost." My friend ran. That night, it stood outside his tent and practiced. He said he could hear it repeating his name over and over, changing the tone each time. Calm, panicked, angry, laughing, crying. It never touched the tent, it just learned. By morning, there were 2 sets of footprints leading away from the campsite, only one set came back. When he finished telling me this, he looked smaller somehow, like something had been hollowed out. "It followed me home," he said. "Not right away, it waited, that's what they do." I told him he needed sleep, I even asked him even if he wanted to go therapy. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "If I come to you," he said, eyes wide, it means it worked. He left before sunrise. 2 days later, he stopped answering his phone. A week later, I got a text from his number. Can I crash at yours tonight? No punctuation, no nickname, he has always used both. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. Please man, I really need help. I locked my door. That night, there was a knock. 3 slow taps, familiar rhythm, I didn't move an inch. From the hallway outside my apartment, his voice called out, perfectly steady, I know you're awake. I stayed silent. Something shifted on the other side of the door. A long breath, then, softer. I told you this would happen. The handle turned, it didn't open. But it turned, I didn't sleep at all. This morning, I checked my phone, there was one last text sent at 4:12 a.m. It's better at being me now. I don't know what to do, because an hour ago, my neighbor asked why my friend was standing outside my door all night, said he never moved, said he just stood there, smiling, and waiting. I don't know what's happened to my friend, but that thing, whatever it was, wasn't him. The end. The anonymous writer who was never caught. In the late 1970s, people living in the small town of Circleville, Ohio began receiving strange anonymous letters in the mail. The letters weren't random. They accused specific people of affairs, corruption, and crimes details so personal that the writer had to be someone local. One of the first targets was a school bus driver named Mary Gillespie. The letters accused her of having an affair with a school superintendent and demanded she end it. Mary denied everything and ignored the letters. Soon after, her husband Ron received one of his own, threatening that something would happen if the affair didn't stop. In August 1977, Ron Gillespie died in a single-car crash after his vehicle struck a tree. At first, the death was ruled accidental. But toxicology reports later showed alcohol in his system, despite family members insisting he wasn't drunk. Some believe he was forced off the road or intentionally crashed after being confronted. The letters continued. Teachers, police officers, and local officials were all targeted. Some letters were delivered by mail, others were hand-delivered to homes. The writer claimed to be watching people and threatened children by name. One day, the Circleville sheriff received a letter warning him about a hidden gun trap near a school bus route. When police investigated, they discovered a loaded firearm tied to a tree, rigged to fire if a string was pulled. The gun was traced to a man named Paul Freshour, Mary Gillespie's brother-in-law. Freshour denied involvement, saying someone was framing him. Despite the lack of physical evidence tying him to the letters, he was convicted and sentenced to prison. He maintained his innocence the entire time. Here's where the case becomes even stranger, the letters didn't stop. Even while Freshour was incarcerated, new letters continued to arrive in Circleville. Some even mocked the police for arresting the wrong person. Handwriting analysis never conclusively matched Freshour to the letters, and no one else was ever charged. Freshour was eventually released on parole, but the identity of the Circleville letter writer has never been proven. No confession was made. No explanation was ever found for how the writer knew such personal information or how the letters continued after the prime suspect was behind bars. To this day, the Circleville letters remain one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in American history, not because of what was written, but because whoever wrote them was never caught, and may still be unknown. The end. The Scratches in Woodbrook. Have you ever had some childhood memories that you can't quite explain? Or memories that you'd prefer to forget? Now, I know that this sounds cliché, but I have some. And I am writing this instead of writing out my college essay, but I have like a month, so I say it is pretty reasonable for me to procrastinate on it. Anyways, so, I grew up in a small little town in southern Iowa called Woodbrook. I'll split my memories up using bold headers, if you can call them headers. May 25-27th 2013. I was 8 years old at this time and had just gotten off of school. I was pretty excited for the summer, which meant ice cream and playing on my iPad. Of course, my parents would be trying to drag me out of the house to go do stuff, but I really didn't want to do any of that, because from what I could remember from my reasoning, I didn't like ticks. For, what I think was, hours after school, I just watched YouTube and played games on my iPad. By the time the sun was setting, my mom called my name for dinner, and I ran downstairs to quickly eat dinner. What transpired was my mom trying to get me to eat all my foods. As I ate, I kept looking into the forest for some reason. I don't exactly remember why, maybe I saw something or maybe I just felt compelled. Nevertheless, after eating dinner, my mom made me brush my teeth, take a bath, and then for another hour or so, I think, I played on my iPad and eventually I went to sleep. Now, the main weird, unexplainable part of this was my dream. Even now I could still remember it, as if it was just a regular memory. I was in a treehouse, speaking with my friends and an older woman. She looked to be around the age of the college students I would see throw rocks into the old creek. She just kept saying stuff to me, but I didn't understand them. She kept saying gibberish. We were all looking at a weird scratch in the floor of the treehouse, which wasn't even built back then. It looked like a trident crossed with those Native American homecoming symbols. And then, I could understand what she said. It was 4 simple words. Do not trust them. Now, I did not know what that understood, and when I had told my mom about that dream, she told me it was just that, a dream. October 31st, 2017. Now, I always loved Halloween and planned to trick or treat until I was 18, if you were wondering. Yes, I did trick or treat until I was 18, don't make fun of me, it was free candy, can't really argue with that. I got a costume and everything. I forgot the exact order of how this happened. It was either I went to the library first and then we got my trick-or-treat basket, or the other way around. Well, the trick-or-treat basket part is not important, so I'll omit that. At the library, I spoke to the librarian, Mr. Harborough. Me and him had a pretty good relationship. We'd talk about stuff. I'd talk to him about school. He'd talk to me about when he was younger and used to hunt the local wildlife. He'd always fondly mention hunting the, as he put it, human-like raccoons. I always found this weird, because, shockingly, I have never seen a human-like raccoon before. Always saw it as Mr. Harborough's old age getting to him. He told me to be safe while trick-or-treating, citing the recent missing kids. I ignored this. Yes, I know I was an absolute idiot as a kid and went to go look at some books. I was in a book aisle when the books started randomly falling. Now, from what I could remember, the titles of the books did not spell out anything, they just fell. I then saw, now I could be remembering this wrong, but a shadow at the end of aisle, it just warped and fizzled out. I did what any reasonable kid would do and took a book, checked it out, and just left. November 2nd, 2017. It was Thursday, history class, and I was getting ready for the weekend. I was talking to my best friend, Ryan. To this day, we are still good friends, about all the stuff I was gonna do over the weekend. My history teacher walked up to me and told me something along the lines of, Mike, could you take these laptops to Mr. Lewis, we're done with using them. I obliged and began walking to the computer teacher's office, which was at the end of some long hallway. On the way there, I could swear I was being followed. When I stopped, it just made the feeling worse. I looked behind me, no one. It got to the point where I began shaking uncontrollably for reasons I don't know. The intercom turned on and began playing the same tone, an ear-piercing beep. I stopped right at his door. I couldn't go further, and then the door opened. The computer teacher looked at me and took the computers, thanking me. I asked him if he is hearing the intercom, which I vividly remember was still going off. He shook his head and asked me if I was okay. I just gave him a very shaky thumbs up and walked back to my classroom. December 25th, 2017. Christmas. I was helping my mom prepare the feast. We heard something fall in the living room, and my mom told me to go check it out. I went into the living room and found that the angel we put at the top of our Christmas tree had fallen and was face down. Oh well, I'll just put it back. I pick it up, and screamed as I saw its face. Carved into it was that trident homecoming symbol thing. It was a clear carving. My mom came into the living room and saw it and assumed that I did it. Okay, fair, I did have a history of ruining stuff. I tried to convince my mom that I didn't do it, and she eventually saw how genuine I was being, so she just let it go, but told me to go to one of the only open stores to get a new one. She gave me some money, I got my coat on, and then I was off. While walking there, I slipped on some ice and nearly fell on my face, but I was caught by some older woman, looked to be around college age. I looked at her and said, "Thank you." She said, "You're welcome." Now, I had never seen her before. Woodbrook was small enough that you at least knew what everyone looked like, and I even said, "Who even are you? Never seen you here before." Little harsh, I know, but she responded something along the lines of, "Oh, I just moved here for college, I'm Alicia, by the way, or if you want, you can call me Ale or Zia." Don't know where she got the Zia from, but I digress, I'll just refer to her as Zia for the rest of the story. She walked with me to the little corner store, asked me a bunch of questions, never really personal, but I just got some otherworldly vibe from her, don't know how to explain it. March 12, 2018. It was spring break, which meant no school, and me and my friends could hang out more. Now, my friend group consisted of me, Maya, Ryan, James, and Evan. We had sort of incorporated Zia in our group as well. She was present at our meetings sometimes. When she was present, she took us down to the creek to toss rocks into with the other college students. They didn't seem to mind. Now, that night, when all the other college students had left, we prepared to leave when I saw something on the other side of the creek. It was a raccoon, standing on its hind legs, but its limbs looked wrong, they were stretched, longer, and it was smiling, like full toothy smile. I immediately pointed this out to my friends, they looked, and Zia threw a rock at it, causing it to run away. I immediately said that was a skinwalker. Yes, I was very uninformed back then. Then, more of the creatures seemed to come back, they grabbed rocks and began to hurl them at us. Of course, we defended ourselves, hurling rocks at them. What began was a rock fight between us and these creatures. The creatures laughed like jackals. The only one who didn't hurl rocks at them was Zia, who was actually looking pissed. I could swear I could hear her mutter, "Of course." One of the creatures dashed into the creek and ran towards us. We fled because frankly, I didn't know if that thing had rabies or some other disease. We reached a sidewalk, and a missing poster flew into my face, and I was forced to stop and look at it. It was a younger kid, a girl named Sophia. She was only 4 years old and was last seen near the old creek, but what caught my attention was what was drawn on the missing poster, that damn Triton homecoming symbol. My friends slowed to a stop, and I showed them the missing poster. We all found that weird, but then we realized, Zia was not with us. My friends looked behind me and told me to look out. Suddenly, I was tackled to the floor by one of those things. It was as tall as me. It hugged me, while still laughing, and the damn thing felt like wet cloth and dirt. I found it super uncomfortable, and Zia ran over and tried to pry it off of me. My friends helped, and we got it off. Zia yelled for it to get lost, and it laughed and ran off. I rubbed my elbow. I had scraped it because getting tackled onto concrete is not a fun thing to do. Zia pulled a bandage out of her backpack, and bandaged me up. I thanked her. Now, we all assumed that the symbol was some cult symbol and thought of this horrifying thing that this cult was kidnapping kids to do human sacrifice. Okay, to be fair, if you saw some weird symbol on a missing poster, there were kids going missing in general, and you were like 13 to 14, you'd naturally assume that part. March 16-17th 2018. I went to library and told Mr. Harborough about the incident at the creek. He adjusted his glasses and told me that one time, those things broke into his house and thought it would be really funny to put his infant son on the roof. He had left the door unlocked, so they just waltzed in, took his son from his crib, made enough noise to wave him and his wife up. I asked him what he did to them, and he said he pumped one of them full of lead. They seemed to decide to cut their losses and grab the wounded one and leave. I then asked him if these things were normal and Mr. Harborough said something along the lines of, "Look, I've lived Here for 40 years, it's normal. Okay. I just thanked him and left. That was most certainly weird. I biked home and found a huge stack of mail on the porch. I brought it inside and decided to be nosy and look through it. A lot of it was random stuff that wasn't really important, but I remember one vividly. It was an envelope addressed directly to me. I opened it and found Polaroid photos of the creek and then my treehouse. Naturally, I assumed it was a prank, but just to be safe. I assembled my friends together, and Zia, and we went to my treehouse and climbed on in. Inside, on the floor, we found that damn Trident homecoming symbol again. It was a large carving. We began to talk about what it could be. The cult is marking you, Maya suggested. We did not know what to make of it, but Zia pointed out that it wasn't even a trident, it was a Greek letter, the Psi. I didn't know what that meant, and then she knelt down, stating that this town had both Greek and Native American influence. She rubbed her hand across the symbol, giving herself a splinter. She kept speaking to me about those raccoon things, how they were pests and how they were weird. She then said that there were other things in this town, and then she said 4 simple words, same ones from my dream. Do not trust them. I asked her what that meant, and Zia said, and I remember this vividly, they tend to want something from they just want to really lead you astray. The sky started to get overcast, and Zia stood up. Now, I was scared. Besides those things, I scared of what my dad would say when he saw the symbol. It took him weeks to build that treehouse, and he got pretty expensive wood. If he found out it was scratched, I would be in so much trouble. Luckily, Ryan had an idea. We snuck to the garage and took paint buckets to paint the inside of the treehouse. My dad had wanted to get that done and was too busy. We could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, cover the symbol and make my dad happy. It took us a few hours, but we finally finished painting the inside of the treehouse and called it a day. That night, I tried to get some sleep, but I kept waking up and looking at the closet. At first, I didn't know why, I just felt compelled to look at the closet. But then, as the night stretched on, it stretched as well. There was someone or something in my closet, and it seemed to grow. I decided to be brave, or incredibly stupid, and get up to open my closet. I opened it and there was nothing inside. I looked outside my window and saw it, some man wearing a top hat, which shifted to a crown, which then shifted to wearing nothing. He slipped away and I just stared, before realizing, I was on the 2nd floor. The next day, I went to the arcade to hang out with my friends. Everyone was there, except for Zia, Figures, and Evan. He was gone. We all came up with rational explanations. Maybe he got grounded, maybe he was busy. April 2, 2018. The only thing that remained of Evan was a poster with his face on it. His mom had told the police that Evan did not leave his own house that night. He just vanished from his room, no sign of leaving, no sign of entry or leaving. Without much to work with, the cops could do nothing. Zia offered our friend group her condolences. James suggested we look for him. I brought up the obvious, where would we start? Ryan brought up the old creek, maybe they could start there. We agreed. Evan was a close friend of ours for years, we had to at least try to find him. We went down to the old creek, and I decided to take another stupid risk and get into the water, trudged over to the other side where those damn raccoon creatures came from. My friends followed, and so did Zia. I made it to the other side first and helped the others onto the dry land. We pressed forward, obviously with caution. Ryan led the way as we pushed through the brush of the forest. Zia looked around, stating that this was stupid. Ryan states that she didn't know Evan like he did. Maya pointed out the scratches on the trees. They were formless scratches, but they looked to be artificial. What I mean by artificial is that it looked like they were made with knives and axes. Now, this seemed to confirm our cult hypothesis, but Zia brought up something. Those raccoon things were smart enough to get into a rock fight with them. What's to say they used tools? Okay, that was fair, but we looked up and saw that the leaves were rustling, rapidly. There was barely any wind. Zia told us to get down and not look. We complied and some massive shadow came over us, and suddenly, dead leaves fell. Zia let us look up and the leaves were still on the trees and were still green. We looked down, dead leaves, crunchy and beige. Suddenly, I felt weird, like we were being watched, followed, studied. I began to shake uncontrollably, so much that my legs gave way. Then Maya began to shake uncontrollably, then her legs gave way. And then the same thing happened to James, then Ryan. Only one who didn't collapse was Zia. She was breathing heavily though. Wind rushed through the trees, so much so that it sounded like whistling. But we couldn't get up, like physically could not get up or move. Then, everything went silent. Zia stepped back and told me that she can't carry us all at once, she'll need to carry us back to the other side of the creek one by one. My heart dropped, I felt an unbelievable wave of fear, I knew that if she does this, there would be a moment where only one of us would be alone, vulnerable. Zia sighed and picked out an order of who she'll carry back to safety. I was last. One by one, she slung my friends over her shoulder and walked off. Then, finally, I was alone. I vividly remember tearing up, I was scared, what person wouldn't? Not only that, but I heard something in the trees, whether it was those raccoon creatures or something else. But then, I felt myself getting slung over a shoulder, Zia had come back. I was relieved. We crossed the creek, and she put me down. I could finally stand up again. May 27, 2018. With finals finally finished, we could finally relax. All of us had accepted that Evan was gone. There was nothing we could do. We could not go further and Zia was busy. I went to the creek for the final time, and looked over to the other side, to the tree line. I saw him, Evan, he looked disturbed, traumatized. He just gave me a blank stare, from the trees behind him, I saw a shadowed hand emerged and grab him by the neck. I blinked and he was gone. Never again, never would I go to that creek. Never would I forget what happened. December 7, 2025, modern day. Now, I'm writing these memories down today because, Zia reached out to me, by letter. She explained that something was forgotten from the town, and it really did not appreciate being forgotten. I don't want to return to that creek, I don't want to find out what this thing is. If anyone has any ideas of what I should do, please let me know, but for now, this is it for me. I thank every god out there that I moved out of Woodbrook. The end.